Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. Introducing your host for this evening first. He is the host with the most from the West Coast, the Bay-Area Brawler, Skyler Greenberg. And his partner, he has colonized, energized, and revolutionized the podcasting wrestling world today. Your Colonial Champion, Sean Cody. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everything in between to the Court-Martail Podcast, episode 101, where it all begins again, and depending on how this episode goes, the beginning of the end. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, here, doing something a little unorthodox, as we had a little bit of scheduling conflict, and our ACPW and NWL show had to be pushed back 1 week. So we had to grab somebody to fill in, and unfortunately, the Bay-Area Brawler Skyler Greenberg, our illustrious co-host, could not be here today, so we found a substitute. And that substitute is just like every other substitute teacher who walks in and immediately gets a spitball thrown in his eye. He's immediately told, and he writes his name on the chalkboard, and somebody throws a paper airplane at the back of his head, and then he turns around and takes a desk and yeets it at the guy who threw it at him. It is this man, the proprietor of TAW Gaming, JoshAgeddon. How you doing, my friend?
I really hope that came through. Please tell me that came through good.
Excuse me, I'm bleeding from the ears here. Can we turn the main down a notch, Skid Row?
Sorry.
Dear Lord.
And my fiance's best friend's other fiance showed me a music video. It was like super heavy metal, and they did nothing but scream. And I was like, you know what? That's how I'm going to introduce myself on the next CMP episode.
Well, for those of you whose ears are now beginning to stop ringing, that's JoshAgeddon, who just played that wonderful piece of music that will be
it's absolute garbage.
Angelic to your ears, I'm sure it was. And it was so, I'll tell you what, you are always one to make an entrance. Yes. And it will be memorable. And now, because of that, I have to censor and find the track bar, because we didn't do this within 3 minutes, and I know I used the Thwearwood, baby, and I now got to bleep out that Thwearwood just in case we get monetized at some reason. And given how the channel has been expanding, I have to think about that stuff now, which is great.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The exponential growth of the Court-Martail Podcast, and we only plan to go up from here. So, a different pairing today, as JoshAgeddon has actually formulated part of this show, which is what's going to make it so interesting. He and I have come up with our topics and situations of the day, but, you know, JoshAgeddon, it almost feels like, with Skyler not here, that there's a segment that's missing.
I know. I feel like I know where you're going with this, Sean.
And maybe we just have to cover what's been going on in the world by ourselves, and I guess that research falls upon me. So even though I'm not changing the intro at all, and he's not here, roll that intro, 'cause it's time for them news. Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the WrestleNews with Skyler Green. That is right. It is your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, doing the WrestleNews of the week at your service, and we have got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Are you ready, JoshAgeddon?
Boy, all right, I'm ready. Are you ready to talk about the news?
Skyler missed his calling as an auctioneer, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to sell some high-priced cattle, Skyler, when you come back. It's the role you was born to play, baby.
Oh, God.
So you can totally see it, though.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You can totally see it. So, we have got quite a little bit of news. We got 4 pieces of news, and I am going to cite my sources. And
MLA or APA?
Actually, WCW, which means there are no rules and Eric Bischoff's in charge, but who knows whether he's really in charge. He's just writing the paychecks. So we start we're continuing a developing story here because we have talked a lot about Jeff Hardy over the past several weeks. Has certainly been in the wrestling news circles. Now, according to Matt Hardy Brand's YouTube channel, which is Matt Hardy's YouTube channel, there was a couple of videos that have been released in the past week claiming and beginning the Hardy Boys' final tour, their retirement tour as a team. They have some matches booked in Northeast Wrestling, and on March the 12th, they are going to be in Boston facing either the Briscoes or a team, you're talking about MLA format, facing a team known as the SATs. I don't know who they are.
Bro.
But I know that they did not score 2,400. Yeah.
You can't write this stuff.
Yeah, you have to fill in the bubbles. That's at least half of the test. You have to fill in those goddamn bubbles.
Half-an-inch margins, 12 font Times New Roman.
You got to get rid of that after spacing that Microsoft Word automatically puts in that holds no value because it's not formatted properly. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
So the Hardy Boys are starting their farewell tour on the indie circuit. What are your thoughts on that, and where do you think they're ending up?
I feel like the finale, it's a foregone conclusion. The finale is going to be in AEW.
Yeah.
But the way that they're talking about this and going about this, I'm not sure if it's a work or not.
Well,
I mean, it would make sense if they actually do retire because they're not exactly spring chickens, and they've done it all in the wrestling business. So
for sure.
Either way, it could be a work. It could be them actually going on an actual retirement tour. I'm not sure. Whatever they do, I hope it works out well.
Now, here's my question to you, JoshAgeddon. Do you think it's smart? If the end goal is AEW, do you think it's smart for the Hardys to be wrestling independent circuits if the end goal of this whole retirement deal, after all of the controversy and the fact that Jeff Hardy got one over on the WWE, does it take a little bit away from the aura that he has now built with all of this news by showing up in wrestling indies before he shows up nationally?
So what sounds like you're suggesting he just go ahead and go to AEW.
Well, it's just, my thing is that momentum is everything in professional wrestling.
And you think him going to the independents, like a small promotion that no one's ever heard of, would like cut him off at the knees?
Well, it's not that it's not that it's the promotions themselves that are to blame, It's like, obviously, the Hardys in Northeast Wrestling have been doing business for the better part of a decade and a half. That's something that they have always been a part of. And I've seen them on the shows. I've met Matt and Jeff, both of them at Northeast Wrestling shows. So I'm not surprised they want to do these indies because that's really what bolstered their popularity going in. But if you're Tony Khan and you're saying, I surefire guaranteed have the Hardy Boys, what happens if Jeff breaks his leg before he shows up in AEW?
Yeah, that is a good point.
What happens if something, they botch a move and Jeff takes a bump on the steel steps like he did in that TNA match? You remember that?
Oh, yeah, that was brutal. But, as much as I love Jeff, he's a loose cannon. You never know what's going to happen. And if that's the last stop, you never know.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not saying that they shouldn't go out and have these matches and they shouldn't have fun. Of course they should. It's their right. At this point, it's their right. But if I'm Tony Khan and you've got them and you're already basically paying Jeff, I imagine, why would you risk an asset with that kind of momentum who just got the one-up on WWE and could go on Talk as Jericho and talk all his shit at the second that he lands?
Because as we've discussed, Tony Khan is very inexperienced as a booker, and this feels like a short-term, short-sighted decision. He clearly has not thought about, again, will Jeff Hardy actually make it to the end where they come into AEW?
Or Matt. I mean, it's not like Matt doesn't have problems. Yeah. Matt's got, but the only difference is that Matt has got zero momentum. His career is basically dead in AEW, and Matt needs Jeff again.
Not even joking. The last several times I've watched AEW, the only thing that happens with Matt Hardy is that he just stands in the crowd while someone else wrestles that's associated with him, and he just stands there and looks mildly interested.
Yeah, and pretty much everybody else is. I don't even think the fans are even mildly interested in Matt anymore. You know,
Yeah.
And I love Matt. I've always loved Matt, but Matt is not entertaining in AEW, and he never was.
Yeah. And by the way, I actually just watched a match with Matt Hardy a couple minutes ago before I jumped on the show. It was Matt Hardy versus Manu on Raw 2008.
Oh, Manu. Man, my dude.
Yeah.
That was, what a time to be alive. But, at that point, Matt Hardy was rocking and rolling, and people actually had support for him.
Champion.
Yeah, but now, Matt is like, he's the least relevant of the members that he made more irrelevant than they were before they joined on with him.
Yeah.
And and it's just a shame that's, again, Tony Khan just doesn't know how to handle things. But, maybe Matt and Jeff can get on Talk is Jericho and say, look how great it is for us to be Hardy Boys again. And I found it weird they used Hardy Boys even though they're in their, mid-40s.
Hardy Men's.
Yeah, the Hardy Men's. They should be dressed up like William Regal when he showed up to WWE in the construction uniform. He's a man. Hardy man. Could you imagine how thrown the audience would be if they just straight up 180 gimmick changed like that?
The first time AEW fans see Jeff Hardy, he's in a suit and his theme song is "He's a Hardy Man." Or if you remember the old days of the M4gNation, he's a Hardiman. But unfortunately, who knows how this is gonna go? Obviously, they're gonna end up in AEW. It's really not a matter of if; it's definitely a matter of when. And speaking of a matter of when, it's only a matter of time before Chris Jericho's like, "That's popular. Let me stick my dick in it." And yeah.
And speaking of Chris Jericho, I have some wonderful news about Chris Jericho as our next piece.
He joined the TV show The Biggest Loser.
Is that show even on anymore?
They should bring it back just to have Chris Jericho on the show by himself.
Chris Jericho's the only contestant. It takes all 4 trainers. Look, we gotta break his weight down in sections. Okay, you get the top quarter in the left side. You get the gut. You get the biceps, and I'll handle the legs and below.
And keep his dick away from anything that's popular.
Yeah, no, anything. Well, it looks like that dick ain't going anywhere anytime soon because according to Matthew Wilkinson. And who is part of Wrestling Inc. As I said, I'm thetting my thoughts, baby. And from WrestlingInc.com, and of course this is from our fantabulously fearless uncle on the Wrestling Observer Radio. It appears that Chris Jericho had a 2-year option. Though he has signed for 3 years and got a 2-year option to pick it up for 5. That's pretty typical as far as professional football contracts, like a rookie deal that'll happen sometimes where they'll get hired, they'll get 4 years, and if they think things are going well, they'll pick up the 5th-year option. It turns out that they have picked up the 2-year option, so Chris Jericho's contract runs through 2024.
So Chris Jericho is so flaccid right now in AEW.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be one thing if his dick was hard and it would actually benefit and everybody would feel good when they got fucked, but it's just limp dick fucking from Chris now.
Yeah.
And it's just not what it was because everything that he touches turns to shit. It's been...
Isn't the inner circle breaking up or something? I hope so.
Yeah, like a bunch of kids on the playground. And hopefully Sammy Guevara can just be... He was kind of like, all right, I'm just done with all this and not get any on him. Because if there's anyone who's benefited from the inner circle, it's been Sammy Guevara.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And I think that, honestly, Santana and Ortiz will bounce back. They just need to not be associated with Chris Jericho anymore.
They just feel like henchmen.
Yeah. And it doesn't do any favors. But speaking of tag teams, they are not the only ones who have had their options picked up. And that would be Frankie Kazarian, and only Frankie Kazarian of that group, and everybody's favorite cosplay kids, the Young Bucks.
Oh, boy.
So they're not going anywhere either. So they also have a couple of them.
I can just sense your just enthusiasm going through the roof, Sean.
I mean...
Oh, wait, that's your blood pressure.
I mean, it's AEW. At this point, I know what I'm getting when it comes to that. And I've kind of understood that with Young Bucks matches, because I never watched them live, I could skip the middle 10 or 12 minutes of every match they do and miss nothing.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
You know, and that's... So at this point, I'm kind of like, all right, how's the match start and how's the match finish? Everything else, I just know it's filler. There's nothing that's going to interest me in the middle of those matches. And if there is, somebody can point it out to me and I'll go back and watch it. It's just... I'm not even that upset. The intriguing thing to me is that of the 2 members, or 3, as it were, of SCU, only Kazarian had his option picked up. Now, that's not to say that Christopher Daniels isn't a part of AEW, but we haven't seen him in a long-ass time, and he has been wrestling elsewhere.
Oh, I thought he was, like, injured or something.
He was. I don't know if he still is. I've been seeing him advertised. So, I don't know. But what are your thoughts on Frankie Kazarian and like, SCU as a whole? Because they were important until they weren't.
They were important for, like, the first year of AEW, and then they just fell off the face of the earth. And this is honestly the first I've heard of SCU in, like, actual years, so...
Yeah,
I don't know.
And just to update, Christopher Daniels is actually, he suffered a really gruesome eye injury in May of last year, and he's actually still recovering from it. And there's some very graphic photos here.
Oh, no.
If you look up this eye injury, they're pretty gnarly. I mean, viewer discretion advised when you get to it, but he's been billed, but maybe I've just been seeing his, just because he just did a couple interviews discussing this eye injury, so... You
got me curious. I want to look this up now.
Yeah, so this is, get well, Christopher Daniels. They're saying that it's possibly a permanent injury, too. It's not guaranteed. I'm not going to read too much into this. But he's going to have lingering side effects potential, but he doesn't know about a potential return to the ring either.
Ooh.
But,
oh, God!
Yeah, and I'm not going to post this up as a photo on this channel. If you want to look at this, just go and Google it. You know,
Dude.
You're on the interwebs, just let it happen.
Oh my God.
And
I can't even imagine that. My God.
And just to kind of wrap this whole Christopher Daniels thing, because it is pretty gruesome, he spoke to Insight with Chris Van Vliet about the eye injury he suffered, and that was 9 months ago. And
that must be really serious then.
Yeah, and it's still, he says it's still discolored at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. And
get well soon, Christopher Daniels.
Yeah, and this is what he said as far as his return to the ring. He says, the landscape of AEW is in constant flux. Additions, subtractions. So, I mean, it's a crowded field right now. And hopefully I can make my way back there. You know, there's no real timetable as to when that might be. I'm sort of at the mercy of circumstance. So
that sounds about right.
So get well soon, Chris. I had no idea that it was that drastic. I mean, I knew we hadn't seen him in a while. But you almost have to wonder, maybe that's why Kazarian was picked up, was to make sure that he was there when Daniels came back.
I just hope his eye gets soon. His eye gets better soon. So
yeah, seriously. So get well soon, Mr. Daniels, because I do love everything that he does. Mm-hmm. And speaking of AEW, while we're on the train, let's hit our main event of news, the big news. Speaking of options that were or were not picked up, Cody Rhodes and Brandi Rhodes had this same 2-year option to be picked up by Tony Khan, and were not. So that means that Cody Rhodes and Brandi are no longer in AEW.
When I read that, my jaw dropped.
I wish I were surprised, but I'm actually not.
I mean, when you think about it, it's not surprising. It's just all of a sudden, like on a relatively news light day, because the day of, nothing was really happening.
Yeah.
And I just looked at my phone and saw that, and I was like, "Hang on now, wait, what?"
Yeah. Yeah, it was a surprise, a shock to me as well. But partially not, because you heard the stories about how much heat there was backstage on Cody and Brandi for leaving and coming back and just basically wanting to be social climbers and not even caring about, at that point, you could almost feel that Cody and Brandi didn't really care about the wrestling anymore. They cared about their fame.
They cared about the placenta.
Yeah, and that's, well, clearly, because that's what rubbed people the wrong way, particularly QT Marshall. And let me read to you first the AEW statement that they've made. This was, I assume Tony Khan wrote this. It says right here. And this is coming straight from SportsIllustrated.com. Cody and Brandi Rhodes were integral to the launch of All Elite Wrestling. Cody's ability, not Brandi's, combined with his bull... That wasn't in there. I just thought I'd have to add it. It is worth... It's worth noting that Brandi was not mentioned in this sentence.
It's surprising to see Cody go, but when I read that Brandi was gone too, I cheered.
Yeah. Cody's ability, combined with his boldness and passion for our industry, and his love for community outreach, helped AEW deliver on our mission to give fans what they needed for far too long. Something new, innovative, and lasting. And I'm going to stop right there. What community outreach are you talking about?
A wonderful TV show for audiences to enjoy, Sean.
That is not community outreach. That's being on TV.
Yeah.
Show me the charity work that Cody and Brandi Rhodes have done other than placenta recycling. I'll wait.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
You can send that to a lot of children's hospitals.
Listen, I know that's good for the environment or something. I don't know. I'm not a female, but, Tony Khan continues. Brandi helped us shape the AEW story, and I appreciate how hard she fought for us both in the ring and out of the ring. Competing in the women's division, even though she never had a match, while advancing our efforts at inclusion and civic causes.
Oh my God.
Including great partnerships with Culture City and the American Heart Association. That she might have done. I have no reason to say that she didn't. I have immense respect and appreciation for Cody and Brandi, and I wish them both the best as they move on from AEW and quit being a pain in my fucking ass. Again, that last part was just me, but...
Yeah. I wish he actually did put that.
I know. Well, you never know with Tony.
Yeah.
Tony basically said Big Swole sucked. That's why she's released. So.
Well, he wasn't, and the thing is, he wasn't wrong about that. But
no.
Still.
And if he had said, because they're being a pain in my ass, he wouldn't be wrong about that either.
Yeah.
So
I guarantee you someone edited this for him.
Oh, Tony? I would imagine so. Because this is straight out of the PR box.
Yeah.
And there's a lot about this whole thing with Cody and Brandi. There's now news, the scuttlebutt, which I will call it purely that because it's coming from Uncle Dave. The scuttlebutt is everyone in AEW hated Brandi. They didn't mind Cody, but they did not like Brandi at all.
I mean, if this is true, can you blame them?
Not at all. Not at all.
She seems very unlikable. She just has that kind of personality that's just, it's a heat magnet.
Yeah. It's absolutely. And it's a heat magnet and not the, I want to see you get beat heat magnet. It's the heat magnet of please get off my television so I don't have to suffer through you again.
It's Ronda Rousey in the 2022 Royal Rumble go away heat.
It's Shane McMahon for the last 6 months of the Best in the World run heat.
Yeah.
It's yeah. And it was just this... I think that they had to leave. And then, of course, you heard the stories about Cody and, booking, trying to get himself booked in ways that were advantageous to him and running into conflicts with even the elite. You're hearing these, the reports. about all of that. But it's not over. Because apparently, let me just make sure I've got my quote right. This is from Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated's Justin Barrasso reports that multiple sources have said that part of the reason that Cody left AEW was that Tony Khan took full control of the booking responsibilities. Cody was originally a part of that process, but Tony Khan took it all. And I guess that rubbed Cody the wrong way because he thought he was going to come in here like his daddy and book himself over the top, baby. And Tony, that was the only time Tony exhibited any balls and said, no, I'm going to do this. For better or worse, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about cokehead Tony Khan over here, but at least he showed some balls.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what he's been needing to do.
Start saying no to people more.
Yeah, or all the time.
This is a good step. This is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think Cody really, at this point, Cody had become cancerous to AEW, yeah. Realistically, and that's heartbreaking to say because I still believe that my favorite match of AEW is the match with him and Dustin, even though they bungled the build. I love that. I love that match. That match was terrific. But
his
to go
match
from
with Jericho for the AEW World Title was also really, really good.
Yeah, and then he started feuding with Anthony Ogogo and started trying to reignite the Revolutionary War for no reason, and then Placenta Town, and it's just, and then to go to film his crappy game show, and
God, every time I see an ad for that, I'm just like, why?
And that is kind of the overall point here is because I assume that Cody's not going to be doing any of that stuff anymore now that he's not with AEW, especially now that the reports are that Cody Rhodes could begin working for WWE as soon as Friday, the day that this is being released.
I mean, he wanted his own reality show. He wanted to host a game show. WWE sounds like a place that is right up his alley at this point.
Yeah, and apparently it feels like almost immediately Vince McMahon called Cody as far as and WWE has viewed Cody's release as a huge deal. And while there is no timetable for Rhodes to return to WWE, this same guy Justin Barrasso reports that sources have confirmed he is guaranteed headed back, but there's also no word if he will be wrestling under contract, similarly to how he was not at the end of the Tony Khan run. But it's not guaranteed that he will be working on the day this is released. There's potential that he could show up at WrestleMania or at the Raw after WrestleMania. But here's my question to you, JoshAgeddon. Who does he face?
I think the more apropos question would be, should I care?
Well, that was my follow-up question is who's going to give a shit?
I'm not going to lie. I don't hate Cody. Like, I know that, especially Skylar. Skylar hates Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you hate him. You're just kind of sick of him.
I just think he's a fucking idiot. Every time he opens his mouth, I want to slap him.
That as well. Me, I'm just more indifferent and who cares. I don't care what he does.
And I think that's part of the problem because it's not like Cody's going into AEW with heat. He's going into WWE rather. It's not like he's going into WWE with heat. He's going into WWE with, oh, it's you.
With apathy.
Yeah. And like, who do you put him against? You have him babyface against Roman Reigns?
Oh, God.
What do you have him fight Brock Lesnar?
John, no. Don't give them ideas.
Maybe you put him in with Kevin Owens. The only person I think that could probably capitalize on that is Kevin Owens because Kevin would just cut it like it was.
It's going to be Cody versus Roman, the Kingdom versus the Empire.
Yeah, hopefully Fight Owens Fight will kick the teetotal shit out of Cody Rhodes. And, maybe we'll see Damian Sandow return and we'll see the Rhodes Scholars. But I think it's just going to be...
Oh, that's a throwback right there.
Hopefully Kevin Owens just opening up a can of whoop ass, which leads to our last news of the week. Now, this isn't necessarily news. Oh, and one more piece about Cody and WWE. All reports confirm that Brandi will not be joining him.
Thank Christ.
Brandi is going to be taking care of their baby. I hope.
I feel like Vince actually said on the phone, we would love to have you back. The one thing is, the one caveat, do not bring your wife. No thanks.
No. Leave her home. Leave her home. Give her a YouTube cooking show. I don't care what you got to do.
Like, I mean, you can bring her placenta if you want to. I don't care about that.
Oh,
but,
God.
I mean, I can put it next to my egg. So.
Dear Lord. Well, hopefully WrestleMania won't lay an egg the way that the Royal Rumble laid an egg. And hopefully we will, because there's actually, the one person I think who would actually be able to get some mileage out of a Cody Rhodes feud on his moment back would be Kevin Owens. Because he's the one who's actually allowed to say real shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's, which is now leads to our last piece of news. Now, this isn't necessarily news. This is an interesting report. And I like this idea because it is current, it's a Meltzerism. So take this as a Meltzerism. Okay. But I've heard whispers about this in a couple different places. So, apparently, on the card for WrestleMania 38, there is a match penciled in. Kevin Owens versus Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I hope not.
I want to get excited for that, but I can't.
I refuse to get excited for that.
Yeah, it's just, it almost feels like it's not worth it. Especially considering that both Brock and both Brock and Steve Austin have said that the only people that they haven't fought were each other, and that if Austin were going to come back, and this was something he said a couple days ago, it would probably be against Brock Lesnar, who I would trust more than Kevin Owens, no disrespect to Kevin Owens, but to also take care of Steve Austin and make sure his neck isn't totally destroyed. But still,
I don't need to see Stone Cold Steve Austin in 2022. I just don't.
Well, you know what it would be about? It's that Vince knows his ratings are in the toilet and he'd be looking to make that extra $1 billion.
Vince, it's not 1990 anymore.
And, and this is something, it's penciled in, and again, this is a Meltzerism, but the fact that this has been brought up, and just recently on the Pat McAfee show, Brock Lesnar mentioned that the only person that he had not wrestled that he wanted to was Steve. And he actually did a really funny Steve Austin impersonation. It was quite funny. You should take a look at that podcast. You can have that free ad, Pat. I know you need it.
Yeah.
And in that respect, just because Brock Lesnar was the reason that Stone Cold left in 2002 because he didn't agree with the booking. He comes back after all this time because he still has an issue with Brock. After the podcast with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman in 2016, you remember that? Where Paul Heyman basically gets Steve Austin to cut a promo on Brock Lesnar. They have the material for that match. What material do they have for him and Kevin Owens? He uses the stunner.
Yep. Yeah. We're getting Goldberg versus Roman, the match they wanted at WrestleMania. Why? Because they both use the spear. Because this company's run by morons.
And instead we got Goldberg and Bobby Lashley, who also both use the spear.
Yep.
Goldberg, Charlotte, book it. Anyway, who do you root for there? Who do you root for in that matchup?
I root for them to both just get permanently disfigured so I never have to see them again.
I root for Charles Robinson. That's who I'm rooting for. But so in any case, just an interesting piece of speculation, as it were. And I tend to agree with you. There's no way that Austin comes back and looks like Austin. Even though his moveset was really limited, especially because of his injuries at the end of his career, I just don't think it had the same sting anymore.
I think it'd be like Shawn Michaels coming back at Crown Jewel, just kind of sad.
Yeah. At least it's not at Saudi Arabia.
Could you imagine?
With Austin, no. With Austin, no, because he's got too much integrity. And I think that's what's going to stop this from actually happening, by the way. I think that Steve's going to look at it and be like, I could do this, I'd like to do this, but is it worth doing this in the grand scheme of things? Does it help WWE in the grand scheme of things? Yeah. Would he drop buckets of money? Without a doubt. Without a doubt, he would draw WWE buckets of money if he came back for one last match. There's no disputing that. And at the end of the day, that is what this business is about. I understand that too. However, perception is reality in the world of professional wrestling. That's a Vince McMahon quote. And I think
he doesn't believe in it anymore.
At all. At all. So to do this, I think it would just hurt everyone involved at the end of it. No one would come out looking better.
I'm just hung up on, like, it's 2022. I don't need to see it. I think it would be sad. I think it would just suck.
Or it'd be so goddamn short that it would be like, blink and you miss it. Well, this was fun, folks. That's going to do it for us here. You know, it's another admission that they just don't have any idea which end is up. The fact that Steve Austin's being considered tells you that this company does not know which end is up. And
like a couple weeks ago, they didn't even know what they were going to do for the WWE title at WrestleMania.
They still don't.
Jeez.
They still don't. They have no clue what they're doing with it anymore.
Well, they need to figure out something by Saturday.
Well, you say this. But they will figure out something on Saturday.
Yeah.
And that will be the answer to that.
3 minutes before the show starts.
Yeah, maybe 3 minutes before the match starts.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, there's no guarantee that they're not just Bischoffing this and just winging it on the fly. You know, with a loose idea. And you'd think for a company with that many agents and that many people trying to organize this, that they would do better than not giving a clean drug test to Jeff Hardy and not booking a WWE champion a month and change away from WrestleMania. What are you going to do about it, though?
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? Well, maybe.
I'm going to sit here and watch the fireworks.
Well, fireworks, or maybe it'll either be Goldberg's fireworks or Gilbert's sparklers. But maybe as they're sitting at a booking meeting and they're getting that brain lock when you're trying to book something and you're really trying to get it done, but I'm sure you've experienced this in South Carolina Championship Grassland. You get things lined up, you get things ready, and then all of a sudden you hit that booker's block. And you don't know where things are going. And you don't know where you want them to go because you got options. Have you ever experienced this before, JoshAgeddon?
All the time.
All the time. And what I've found when I encounter these things for ACPW and for my many various booking ventures is sometimes I just need to sit down, shut up, and listen to some music to clear my head. And the best music that doesn't involve just unrelenting screaming is here. Actual palatable music in the form of a new era in entertainment has arrived. ABProductions CT is proud to drag you out of the superficial monotony and overproduced, oversimplified modern musical mud pit with count 'em, two marshmallows. Industry-busting artists slowly taking the world by storm. Abizzle and White Knux deliver an avant-garde approach to music that blends elements and instruments of a wide number of musical styles, including hip-hop, R&B, jazz, funk, rock, house, EDM, electronic dance music, and so much more. It is high time for the music industry.
Damn marshmallows.
That's right. Marshmallows may or may not be included with download of said music. It is high time for the music industry to be shaken to its core. So be a part of the foundation-breaking movement by supporting aspiring artists by putting those two marshmallows in between chocolate and graham crackers. And right now, Catch the latest release, The Wax Apocalypse, a 32-track album that took 2 years to come together. A saga of a lifetime awaits your eager ears. Look for Abizzle, spelled A-B-I-Z-Z-L-E, or White Knux, spelled W-H-I-T-E space K-N-U-X on SoundCloud, Apple Music, and Spotify for this and the entire ABProductions CT discography of over 100 songs and projects, including Retreat, Mixed Bag, Verses from a College Grad, Bear Min, soon to be, in the next couple of months, Just a Bit More, Mixed Bag 2, Recovering, and many more. All just a short click away. The link is in that description. Come and join the entertainment revolution with ABProductions CT.
That was my response.
That sounded like me deflating my tires in my car.
Or deflating some marshmallows.
Yeah, it's, well...
That killed me.
Yeah.
I was so unprepared for that.
Yeah, it's SpongeBob references when you least expect it. And that's the world of the internet, is references everywhere, and sometimes you can have references fight each other, as I'm told.
No.
And those references can fight each other, and it's actually something that you wanted to bring up, JoshAgeddon. Why don't you tell us all about it?
Oh, yeah. All right, so we have seen or heard over 100 episodes of the Court-Martail podcast, and it's been a hell of a ride. But the thing is, that one thing that I've noticed is all 100 episodes have been about, like, actual real-life wrestling with actual real-life people.
Yeah, how dare us?
Yeah.
How dare us stay true to the idea of our show?
Yes, but we discussed this in the podcast we did about my accident over. Can you believe it's been a year since I was in that accident?
I know, absolutely wild. I'm glad you're still here.
Absolutely, but we mentioned that we met because of a video game wrestling show, a CAW in Efed, and that's what. I was like, could we do an episode about this? Because even though it's a video game, it's still technically wrestling.
And it's important.
Yes, it has its place on the internet. And me and Sean, I have TAW, Totally Awesome Wrestling. Sean has CIW.
Colonial Impact Wrestling.
I was about to say Colonial Impact. I was about to say Championship Impact Wrestling, and my brain was like, "That's wrong. What is it?"
It's okay. We've only been around for 8 years. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. But yes, I do TAW. Sean does CIW, and there are so many Efeds and CIW channels. You have Anime Championship Wrestling. You have TNXA. You have CCL. You have SNW, SMF, and one of the most popular ones, the one that we actually met watching, the YOUR-Nation, even though they closed down a couple of years ago and no longer make videos. Yeah. Sad face.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the phenomenon of internet video game wrestling, CAWs and Efeds?
Well, it's a fascinating introspection because on the one hand, it has allowed a completely different community to develop outside of the realm of actual professional wrestling. Because there's a lot of people who do the Efeds who don't watch a lick of wrestling now.
Yeah.
I know many of them who are like that. And there are, I mean, JoshAgeddon just rattled off like 9 or 10. There's hundreds.
There's hundreds
of them out there. There's a Facebook group which is dedicated to this phenomenon. It's got like what?
I'm not even joking. I'm like a part of 10 different Facebook groups. I'm an admin for a Facebook group.
Yeah.
It's just CAW Wrestling.
Yeah. And CAW, for those of you kids out there, is Create a Wrestler. Mm-hmm. Because where these are developed from the WWE, for the most part, I don't think anyone has a TNA Wrestling Efed. I'm not positive on that. I could be wrong.
You would be surprised.
I'm sure. You know what? I don't know why I say that. I'm sure there is. I'm sure somebody's popped up something. But in any case, wrestling video games a lot of times have Create a Wrestler. So a lot of people would make either comic characters or, you know, pop culture references or certain people and you know, in today's society of good, bad, and everything in between. And,
or even their own original creations, their OCs.
And A lot of people love putting themselves into it because they're all marks, which is the whole reason we all met.
By the way, my third wrestling show on my channel is XAW, Extremely Awesome Wrestling, and the concept for that is I was allowing fans of my show to put in their own OCs. I had to tell people to stop putting themselves in my show. I'm like, your own creation, not you. That's a different thing, but so many people are just like, oh, put me in. And it's like Donkey and Shrek.
Yeah. It's honestly, and this is just, I want a blanket statement in this for anyone who owns an Efed out there who might be listening to this. Electronic Federation, again, for you kids out there. All of you out there, listen to what I'm about to say because this is very important. If you are booking yourself in your Efed, it is an instant turnoff.
Yep.
It is an instant turnoff. Don't be that much of a mark for yourself. Leave yourself out of it.
Having characters on your show beat the tar out of you.
Yeah. Now, or you've actually built it up to for a reason of having the match.
Yes.
Right? Unless you've built it adequately, but do not put yourself as a regular member of the roster.
And don't book your friends for no reason.
Yeah.
Don't just book random people.
Yeah. You know, at least without giving them a backstory. At least give them some reason, give people reasons to care. You know, like, about these people. For example,
on TAW, at the beginning of TAW, I booked a feud between Sean and Christopher Carligo, the Shadow, but
from the MagNation. Who's part of these Efeds.
And formerly Shadow Force Wrestling that closed down way before the MagNation closed down.
Like within days.
Yes. So I booked them, but they both were like, hey, we have an idea for a feud we think would be entertaining and wacky. And I went with it, and it worked out really good. And they're still teaming together going up against the Sinful Neglect, and that feud is not over. It's still an XAW. Like, comment, subscribe.
Well, yeah, exactly. And sold for 49 cents at this auction. Both of you should be auctioneers.
One of my lungs.
You and Skylar are actually doing a tag team auctioneering round. I'm all for it. You just you're just pushing up all of the items, and Skylar just rattling off the stuff. And then you just push him aside and say stuff, and then he gets upset and he's like, whatever. And
next PAW match, JoshAgeddon and Skylar versus Omega, Elfberg, and Goldberg.
Oh, dear God. Dear God. But the overall point is that the absurdity of this stuff is that anything that you might want to do outside the box, you could do. Whether it was, there's a presidential election go up. Let's have the presidential candidates fight each other in the ring. Or
I have done that.
Yes, you have. Or you ever want to see how the lead of DC goes up against the lead of Marvel? Bam! Wrestling match. You want to do that 1,000 times like the MagNation did? Bam! Got it.
Purely because it got them 1 million views?
Yeah, it got them stupid amounts of views, which is what, led to their subscriber. We're going to talk about them a little bit later. But the point is that these Efeds, the positives of these Efeds is that the community that is developed amongst these people, and now there are some wackadoos out there, like there are with most wrestling.
I have one in mind that I want to tell Sean about after we talk about the MagNation.
Yeah, and there's some wackadoos out there who definitely take it a little bit too seriously, are kind of Bret Hart in the Efed there, and just need to tone it down a notch, but at the same time, it's allowed for friendships like this to develop. Yeah. That's how Skylar, same thing. He was a watcher of the MagNation, and then we kind of developed a group chat, and then we kicked all of those people out, and we ended up with the three of us. And so, and actually, the people of the MagNation who were I don't want to say they started it, but they're the ones that definitely became the most popular. Mm-hmm. We ended up becoming really good friends with all of them. They lived in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. They live in the same area I do. And then we started talking. I still talk to Packard.
I still talk to Trevor and Magnitude.
Yeah.
I dedicated an entire pay-per-view to them.
Yeah, that I did commentary for.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of good that comes out of it because it's so unique that an offshoot of what is already in wrestling kind of niche, to make that niche of a niche and then to find such a warm group there who just love doing this and creating and booking and being able to showcase their form of expression this way is really nice. And it's a really, like, warming thing. And it's also another interesting point because it was, as fun as watching the matches are, the focus isn't really about the matches on the game.
Yes.
For good or bad, what it really is getting the commentary over.
Yes.
You know, it's about you being yourself on a personality on TV or on YouTube, as it were. And that, I've seen a lot more people get more comfortable with themselves just doing this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I started TAW, like, I was using my phone to record, and it was terrible, and I did it with my brother, and we had chemistry. It's just my brother does not care about wrestling, so it was
Fandango!
Yeah. And I was a little bit more... Imagine this. I was a little bit more reserved, but in the years of doing commentary by myself, I'm much more comfortable with it now, and I can just turn it on like that. And I'm not going to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I'm at the very least decent and acceptable on my own when I'm doing my own show. And when I jump onto someone else's show, again, it's easy to get into since I have so much experience.
And that's also led to a lot of fun interactions too.
Yeah.
Like I did commentary for the M4gNation a couple times.
Me too.
We were on that show.
Oh God, that show was an absolute, just a disaster, but it was amazing.
It was a hoot and a holler. It was a hoot and a holler, and it was a bold idea, you know. Yeah. But you know, as a result, you kind of develop chemistries with people, you know. And then Josh, again, you and I always talk about when we're doing TAW or you come to do CIW stuff, like how hilarious our back and forth can be sometimes.
Yes.
You know. The green-eyed gazonga girls or whatever the fuck I call them.
Green-eyed gazongas of glory.
Yeah, green-eyed gazongas of glory. And for those of you who want to know what that's all about, go watch Galactic Throwdown 8, The End of an Era.
Oh, yeah. I think that was the pre-show of
You're
GTA.
right. You're right. It was the pre-show. But in any case, you could see how genuinely, fond the reminiscence is, having done this for almost a decade now. Can you believe that we're almost a decade in?
I know, it's so wild.
Yeah. And that's how it all started. And that's kind of the overall point, is that these Efeds, for good or bad, because I'm not saying every Efed's good. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. And to be fair, watching video game matches all the time does get that glaze over in the eyes effect after a while.
Yes.
You know, that is because you're it's formulaic because it's a video game match. Even if you're performing in it, as far as controlling somebody, not actually being a mark for yourself, as we discussed.
Yeah.
But that's the good part of Efeds. But there is a bad part.
Yes, there is.
And that is that the people who shouldn't be doing matches that look like video games are the wrestlers themselves. Mm-hmm. And ever since the wrestling video games have been very high octane in their moves, and they're getting up just by nature of the programming and the algorithms they've put into the game, now all of this generation of wrestlers who grew up on these video games want to be the video games rather than the wrestlers that came before them.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Well, I'm not going straight into that, because this is something I want to discuss too, because it's not just those two. Right? And actually, grand scheme, yeah, they are annoying. Yeah, the two are annoying, but they're not the worst offenders. They're really not. Because at least their moves sometimes look decent, even if they look like children. But they're at least executing moves, as opposed to the really sloppy stuff because everyone's trying to go 100 miles an hour because they've seen it in the video games and they think that's how you get over. Because with the popularity of Efeds came people thinking that popularity is what's going to get you over. And as a result, we're getting a lot of people doing a lot of moves and not a whole lot of personalities, which is what Efeds get over in the first place.
Yeah, that is true. It's a very different feel. In real life wrestling, you have to tell a story. In video game wrestling, you have to do a bunch of crazy stuff and be entertaining. It's two completely different formats.
Well, and you, as the creator of the Efed, are responsible for the story.
Yes.
You're responsible for telling it and how it's told. And the problem is the people in the business now are responsible for the story that's told, but they think that they're the AI.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of the problem. I mean, and the case in point, Jungle Boy. I like Jungle Boy's wrestling when he does it. He's got good body language, but he can't cut a promo to save his life. He hides away from it because he just wants to go out there and be the default guy when you're scrolling down the movesets and testing out what all the moves are.
That's accurate.
And that's really what, and it's not, I don't mean to call it just specifically AEW, although I will admit these 25-minute long matches that are all moves are almost a direct result of the fact that that's the format of a lot of modern video games. Think about it. With the MagNation, when they switched over to TV show format, 3 matches on the card could go an hour and 10 minutes with no promos in it.
Yeah.
3 matches. Entrances don't take that long in those modern video games. They take what? A minute?
Yeah.
A piece? Thereabouts. And if you cut out the loading screens, which means that a 20-minute match, you're getting 3 20-minute matches with not a whole lot of filler in between. And some people love that, which is why Efeds are popular. But not when it's being permeated into actual professional wrestling.
Yes, that is true.
And that's where it almost feels like those two entities, while they are inextricably intertwined, the danger was always going to be their integration. And we'll see it. We're about to see it firsthand, not just because we're watching an actual video game match, but because we're also watching a match of people doing a video game match. But that only means that we're at that point of the show. Roll that intro, baby.
What time is it? It's the fight, it's the brawl, it's the match of the week. It's tonight, watch along with the son of a beat. It's one fall, the down for the 1, 2, and 3. So don't stall, hang on to the edge of your seat. We got a punch and a flip and a powerbomb too. All the moves and the stars are all under review. See the baby face cheered and the heels get heat. This is wrestling at its peak. It's the match of the week.
That's right, folks. It is time for the matches of the week. And we have episode 101, and we're doing 2 matches again. Why? Is why. Because I felt like it. And because we wanted to make a point. Which one of these do you want to start out with, JoshAgeddon?
Let's start out with the one that we enjoyed the least.
Well, that would... wow, that makes it a difficult choice. It is the Young Bucks versus War Machine, which is
I heard you say chicken legs. I think you said War Machine.
Yes, I did say it's turkey legs. Well, this was pre-turkey legs. This was pre-turkey legs War Machine, not the War Raiders, not the Viking experience. But
boy, is it an experience!
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, and it's more like I need an exorcism afterwards. That's how bad it is. But in any case, it is the Young Bucks versus War Machine for the WCPW Tag Team Championships, formerly known as Defiant Wrestling, the defunct What Culture created by Marks, so it's not that far from it. That's about as close to a real-life Efed as there's ever been.
Yeah, pretty much.
WCPW. That was made by 5 marks who were like, I want to do wrestling stuff. And then they're like, here's some money. And they did it. And then they had mark matches, and now they're no longer around.
Yeah.
The story of, did they last as long, or did the MagNation last longer than they did?
They lasted way long. The MagNation lasted way longer.
Yeah, by like a solid 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in any
What
case.
Culture Pro Wrestling appeared and was gone almost like a year later or so.
It was like 2 years. They had a good 2-year run. They had the rebrand. And then, for whatever reason, Stu Bennett, a.k.a. Wade Barrett, is just the kiss of grisly death when it comes to independent promotions. He shows up at Defiant, they close down. He shows up at Lucha Underground, they close down. He's on NXT, they get revamped, then they're dead. This is like, what happened?
Wade, what are you doing, Wade?
I'm afraid I have some bad news.
You're closing your doors.
Your company's done. Wow, that's
Warhammer the company right into oblivion.
I never made that connection until now, but yeah. So watch your back, AEW. Don't hire Stu Bennett.
Immediately hire. Tomorrow we get a thing that says Stu Bennett is all elite.
And also I missed a part in the news. It apparently is. I mentioned this just because. Thankfully, he never showed up there because then they really would be defunct. Apparently, Ring of Honor is coming back.
Oh, okay.
And they are having a Super Card of Honor on April 1st, which I hope is not an April Fool's joke. And they're like, "Now we're dead.
Oh my god!
Now we're dead."
That would be the best troll of all time.
That might be the best April Fool's joke ever. They book an entire card, they fill up a stadium, and tickets are like, "April Fools, we don't have any fucking wrestlers. We don't have any money, but thanks for paying for it." Oh man, the lawsuits. That would be, oh man,
it would be worth it. It would be worth it.
But speaking of things that and people that maybe should be arrested for crimes committed against professional wrestling, what did you think of this tag team match? Now, first of all, before you answer that, I don't appreciate the fact that there was a 14-minute match after 13 and a half minutes of complete filler, which I didn't watch, by the way.
I fast-forwarded through all of that. The interview with, I don't know, nameless dork number 47 at the beginning of the video, I skipped through that. As soon as the Young Bucks grabbed a microphone, I skipped through that, and then the match started.
Well, they had a microphone walking into the ring.
I didn't notice that. I was just like,
because
I was kind of dreading it. Not gonna
because
lie.
God forbid in this giant underground place you could find somebody to wear a suit and ring announce. God forbid you have somebody actually like be an interviewer for these two. Nope, just send them out with a microphone. Nobody's gonna give a shit, right? And nobody did, except for me.
Except for Sean.
and then the Ham Hocks come out, and why did I like these guys beforehand?
Watching this, that was a good question.
This was not good.
I did not hate this match. It was just...
It was a Young Bucks match.
It felt like a TV... It felt like a middle-of-the-card TV match that also had a bunch of stupid spots in it.
Well, it started with... Well, that's just it. It was just stupid spots in it. That was it.
We started with crowd brawling, which is an immediate yawn.
Yeah, well, it was crowd brawling... But it was coordinated crowd brawling, so it makes it cool. Let's make sure we do all our moves at the exact same time in the exact same place. The Young Bucks are the closest thing to a tumble routine in professional wrestling. Because everything they did, you could tell they did it at the exact same time because they had it all planned. Like the double dive into the catch by the Bucks. They were going to spear the Bucks together, and then the Bucks both came out and clanked the heads, rolled back in, and immediately double dove over the top again.
I knew you would hate that. When I watched, I was like, "Oh, I can already tell that Sean's going to be pissed."
And well, I wasn't, because I'm just desensitized because it's the Young Bucks, and this is what they do. Yeah. They do coordinated stunt shows. They don't wrestle. They do coordinated stunt shows, and it's just what kind of stunts are we setting up next?
The quadruple missed moonsault, I wanted to turn it off. I hated it.
Yeah, I didn't even watch that part. I literally breezed through this at like 1.5 speed. And I was like just watching it. And it was honestly, I dare you to watch a Young Bucks match at 1.5 speed and tell me what the fuck they do. I dare you. Because I swear to God, you're going to miss half the spots. Because they're already going at 1.5 speed when you're on 1 time speed. And then they just amped it up. And
the stupid, I accidentally tombstone pile driver my partner because they kicked my legs.
Yeah. There's one person in this set of 4 that I found halfway marketable. And, of course, that horse has so far left the barn that it's back behind the shed and I'm about to shoot it.
Well, don't shoot it. They have a SmackDown Tag Team title match this Saturday.
Joy. Well, the one person in this whole thing that I thought would be halfway marketable is Warbeard Hansen. He's always been the one that I thought had the most talent, I thought had the best look, even though his voice sounds like Joan Rivers. He has like the highest pitched squealy voice, but he's the bigger, thicker, bearded one of the two. I don't see anything in Rowe. He has
a solid knee strike.
Yeah, that's about it. He has a headbutt.
Yeah.
That's about it. But Hansen, he can move around for a guy his size. He carries that shit around. He's got the handspring. He had a pretty nice looking moonsault. If he didn't do those moves half the 3/4 of the time and just mowed people over, he could probably get over.
Yeah.
But instead, we got the coordinated stunts. And I'm not saying that he was going to get over in this match, right? Let's be clear about that. Presentation is everything. And
yes.
And that even when I always thought that he did that handspring elbow, which was always looked impressive, but he did it all the time.
Yeah.
So everybody was familiar with it, so nobody gave a shit after a while.
That's a WWE-ism right there.
Yeah.
Doing the same moves all the time.
And that was another part. We got the double sharpshooter again.
I thought, again, it made me laugh. I was like, well, we have one Bret Hart sharpshooter attempt and one The Rock sharpshooter attempt.
Yeah. Because Nick Jackson actually doesn't do too bad with it. But
the other
Matt Jackson, it has no value whatsoever to the contributions of that team. I would have accepted a Nick Jackson Warbeard Hansen match over this.
Yeah, that actually, well, if Hansen would not be flying, if it was power versus speed and agility, then you have a match.
Well, this is also part of the problem, the big problem I have with this match. Just looking at him. War Raiders should be mowing over these guys in 2 minutes. They should be they should be beating them faster than Braun Strowman beat James Ellsworth. Before everybody freaked out about James Ellsworth and his multiple chins. And it's just it looked ridiculous. They do a double super kick and both Hansen and Rowe both take a big ass bump.
Yeah.
That makes perception is reality. And these guys it's one thing when they're facing a team like 2.0 or even Omega and Page, where the visual of the two, or even FTR, I will give them this. At least they look like they could deal damage to guys who are closer to their size range. They do not look like that when they're facing people like Hansen and Rowe. And there was no fighting from behind. There was no underdog stuff. There was no, this guy's super powerful, so I have to get up. There was none of that. The way this story was told, these two were the exact same height, the exact same weight, the exact same height, size, and dealt the exact same amount of damage.
And then we get to the finish where the camera cuts away from the 3 count. I love that. Was Kevin Dunn manning the camera here?
No, it's funny because every time I watch an indie match like this, with the exception of maybe Northeast Wrestling, I sadly come to appreciate Kevin Dunn's mediocrity.
Yeah. Because
sadly, he's got 20 years of experience sucking at it. And that makes it not good, but it's not the worst. It's not as bad as some of these indie shots.
Yeah.
It's just not as bad as some of these indie shots. And that's something that wrestling as a whole needs. They need better filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
They need better people with film minds to shoot these shows. Because I think that what they've got right now is wrestlers trying to shoot for wrestling, which is fine, but it'd be nice to have somebody who is adept in film work with wrestlers who know how to shoot wrestling to better shoot wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't have that because we get Kevin Dunn and cutting away and the
zoom ins and zoom outs.
The tombstone pile driver that was countered by a crappy swanton, and it was this was what you expected out of a Young Bucks match, but I don't know why I still get disappointed in Hanson and Rowe when they really have been doing this forever. They've been just as offensive. Like, oh, this was the part that really I hated the most. When they're all on their knees and they're playing Simon Says with their punches. I'll punch this guy to my right. Okay, you hit me. I'll punch this guy to my right. Okay, you hit me. I'll punch this guy to my right. Okay, you hit me. I'll punch this guy to my right.
Just hit you.
If somebody hit me, I'm not punching the dude to my right. I'm punching the dude that hit me.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, that stuff like that. I'm just like,
it's not wrestling. It's a stunt show.
It's not a real fight.
Yeah.
This is a weird coordinated action scene in a movie.
And that's what the Bucks have made their reputation on. And that's, and I really genuinely think that a big part of why the Bucks are the way they are is because they love Shawn Michaels, they love the Hardys, and they play a lot of WWE video games. Because realistically, how many times have they dressed up as video game characters?
A lot.
Remember when Omega and the Bucks dressed up as the Street Fighter posse?
Mm-hmm.
To face, I don't even remember who at this point. Doesn't even matter. But it's just, that's a direct example of the kind of influence Efeds can have in a negative way.
Yeah. But
for every story like that, there is a hidden piece of gold.
Oh, God, this.
A nugget that is born from the seeds of profanity and flippy shit.
Yeah.
It is. Was this WWE 12?
Yes.
Yeah, so wicked early days. WWE 12, it is Tony Hawk versus Trunks in the MagNation in round 3 of the Atomweight tournament, with the winner advancing to
go up against Jesus.
Go up against Jesus in what round of the tournament?
I think it was the semifinals.
Well, they were wrestling in the semifinals.
Yeah.
But when he faced Jesus, where was he going?
I'm not sure.
Christ almighty. God, watch the match, folks, because if you find that out, because somebody was screaming it the whole time, every time flippy shit happened, it's the finals.
It's the finals.
The finals.
The finals, Tony. The finals.
The finals. Now,
can I just say, the commentary during this match, even though it was hilarious and barely had anything to do with what's going on in the ring, the chemistry between these three, between Magnitude, Packard, and Trevor, so badly just eclipses the modern wrestling commentary.
Yeah.
Just the chemistry these three guys have is unparalleled.
And that kind of brings up the point I was bringing before about it's not about the wrestling, it's about the talent.
Yes.
It's about the commentators. And Trevor and Steve and Packard all got themselves over.
Yes.
From the interaction they had. And Pat James Regan, too, when he was on.
Yeah.
So much so that WWE hired them for a cup of coffee.
Yes.
But that's
and told them they watered down the MagNation.
Yeah, and then wow, it sucked. Who would have thought?
Yeah, WWE format killed the MagNation.
Yeah, which is no surprise.
Yeah,
genuinely no surprise because they're just one of many, and that's probably why they probably did it on purpose. Realistically, they're like, this is getting a little too upset. Because they never did anything beyond that.
Yeah.
For like 3 years until finally Xavier Woods is like, all right, up, down, down. That'll work, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, cool. That's better.
Yeah.
They had no follow-up to that.
Yeah.
You
can't even find that video anymore.
Yeah, they literally took them in, just like took the pistol out, shot them in the face, and were like, all right, we'll see y'all later.
They killed their heat like Triple H did to CM Punk at Night of Champions.
Yeah. But
sad.
When they were getting established, it was matches like these that got them over.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this was hysterically
it still makes
funny.
Me laugh.
Yeah. There are moments that still one of my favorite quotes. One of my favorite quotes is right towards the end of the show when Packard is being like, oh, the Easter Bunny isn't real, the fairy tooth is your mom. And,
my favorite quote in the whole thing was when Trunks kicks out of one of Tony Hawk's moves, and Packard says, hey, guess what? Santa Claus isn't real either, assholes. And Magnitude responds with, but who ate all my cookies? My parents are diabetic.
See?
Yeah. Comedy. That is so funny.
That was their chemistry was what made this match. Because I did an experiment. And I watched this match with the commentary and loved it. But then the day afterwards, I watched the match without commentary. And I couldn't get through it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get through it. It was like I got through a couple Birdmen. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. Not just because I knew what happened, but because it was just him running around and then pressing square a bunch.
Yeah.
And that was the whole concept in the match. Like, on paper, if you're watching this without the personalities involved, it doesn't work.
It looks like someone that's just bad at WWE.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. But when you get these people in there and you get the commentary in, and that's what makes... Really, that's why I think a lot of the flavor of what WWE and AEW gets hurt, because they don't realize how crucial personalities that the audience is hearing are to developing how their show is presented. Which is why Pat McAfee is so vital to WWE right now. As the only tolerable commentator there is. But these three just enjoyed themselves. And as a result, we enjoyed ourselves while they were enjoying themselves.
Yeah. And another thing I loved about this match, if you can call it that, because it is a video game. But during the match, the idea was, like, they were like, Tony Hawk's not going to win. He kind of sucks. And during the match, he kept missing all of his moves that get, like, if you want to, with that context, let's say this, we're real for 3 seconds. Tony Hawk looks like a complete and total moron missing all of his moves. And even at a point, Magnitude's like, all right, breaking the fourth wall, WWE 12. How do you miss that move?
Yeah.
But
that happened a lot, actually.
The story of this is Tony Hawk is incompetent, but he's trying anyway. And they're cheering him on, even though Packard, the heel commentator, is saying, I hope he loses. It was just pure comedy the whole way through.
And the other part of it, too, is that while they weren't taking it seriously, per se, they were still taking the concepts of the storytelling seriously.
Yes.
And so there was some semblance of, we're trying to still engage that there is some level of kayfabe here.
Yeah, and they were invested in the match that was happening. They weren't just ignoring it and talking.
Right. Or squabbling with each other.
Yeah.
You know? There was back and forth, but there's a difference between back and forth and squabbling.
Yeah, it's tongue-in-cheek, like just hanging out with your friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of, oh, well, Byron, you just obviously are just an incompetent boobatron. And I'm clear, here's Carmelo, my dick's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't need that. We don't need any of that. Yeah. But instead, the genuine camaraderie of the whole thing is what makes this work in the context. Yeah. And what's cool about Efeds too, and particularly the MAGNation, is you get to create your own level of kayfabe.
Yeah.
You get to determine where those lines are and where those lines aren't. And the constant adherence to, but with the occasional fourth wall break that worked for what they were trying to do. And when you've got that, and when you understand that you have to keep a level of continuity or a level of kayfabe in what you're doing, you can make this successful if you've got the personalities in place. And that's why this was so entertaining. It really was. Seeing him do the springboard when Trunks isn't even in the ring.
Springboarding back into the ring and landing on his face while Trevor is laughing.
And Trevor just crying. That was
infectious.
Yeah. It was just as much of a video game match as the Bucks and War Machine, but
infinitely more entertaining.
But with the infinitely more entertaining just based on the people involved And also, one of the benefits of Efeds is that you're not reliant on the talent, the actual wrestlers to be perfect, because they're AI for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that in that way, you're not examining every single move they're doing and how it looks or what they coordinate or if it's a coordinated effort, because it's not, because it's AI.
Yeah.
And it's one thing, and that's another thing. AI is smarter than people. So when people are trying to do stuff that AI does, it doesn't look as good.
Yeah.
Because people are stupid.
Yes.
But this matchup was fun.
Yes, it was.
It was just fun. And that's really the overall part of it. It's not the wrestlers having fun and the people watching the wrestlers have fun. It's commentators having fun while continuing to lead us through the match so that we have fun with them.
Yes, that is the key right there.
And that brings us to our spotlight. We've talked about them all show, but we're going to give them a little shout out here. And part of it is because I have a lot of respect for these guys. I know you do too. And also because it's different. Because we're going to actually highlight a promotion. We're going to highlight the entirety of the MAGNation. So our spotlight is Steve Wood, Trevor Nickel, Stephen Packard, and Pat James Regan. Because you got to group them in.
Oh, yeah.
You got to group him in because he's just as important with his barking noises and his black wingishness. And these four, and it began with Steve, and or Magnitude, as we all came to know him. And it started with Magnitude, and then Trevor and Packard and the Shadow, because it really started with Steve and the Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
With Magnitude and the Shadow, and then Shadow Force Wrestling failed. There was a hilarious, I think it was a Royal Rumble, where Hiei just glitched outside the ring and then showed up back in the ring.
Han Solo gave him a bicycle kick, and then one of the two of them just froze and levitated out of the ring and then ran back into the ring and kept wrestling.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what is actually happening? Because as we all know, and I will say this to the day I die, WWE 12 and WWE 13 are just the worst video games. Just the worst.
They're great for the memes, not for the game.
Exactly. They're dump fire garbage. Especially 13.
Yeah. 1. Oh, that's it.
Yeah. Do a finishing move, 1 count. A hip toss, 3 count. Yep. 0, 2 count.
Most useless move in wrestling, slamming the arm to the mat, you're done. It's over.
Yeah.
And And again, between their catchphrases, and the springboard, and the breaking the fourth wall, and Trevor's Bane impression, and Packard getting actually angry at Skeeter Valentine and the Cthulhu Red Ranger.
Oh, those were good times.
That was never a work with Packard. He might have said it was. It never was. He was always upset that these people they were there.
Yes. One of my favorite inside jokes was that the Red Power Ranger was actually a squirrel that was also Cthulhu.
Yes.
And he would unleash that weird demonic squeal.
Yep.
Oh God, that was so funny.
Yep. It was, and that was just part of it. That was just but that was also something they also did, which was another thing that also got them over. They added personality to the roster.
Yeah.
They added character traits to the roster, like the Red Ranger is a squirrel and Cthulhu. And then that became his thing. So every time you saw the Red Ranger, you're like, oh shit, it's going down.
Yeah.
Trunks, TR Unks.
TR Unks.
Darth Maul.
He's going for cocaine and women, and more cocaine, and more women.
Spider-Man, not winning anything, ever.
Yeah. Dante from Devil May Cry being drunk.
All the time.
Majin Buu with Lyme disease.
I forgot about that one.
Jack 6 bleeds Hawaiian punching and is afraid of the floor.
Bojack being absolutely useless in big match moments.
Yes. Marcus Phoenix being Grand Admiral concussion.
Yes. Oh man.
Yes.
Sub-Zero's neck.
One of my favorites. Trunks. He snorted Link's ashes to gain his sexual and emotional power.
That's right.
And went Super Saiyan 2.
And then Link showed back up and just confused everybody.
Oh god.
Yeah. Sub-Zero's broken neck.
Then we still reference
a joke that has translated cross promotion. Has gone. There's so much so that Noob Saibot's neck has been broken. His brother.
it's a gimmick that is contagious.
That's right. That's right. Especially if you got a fan. Whole family's got fragile necks.
And Taylor Swift. Remember when Taylor Swift had that match with I forget whether the girl from The Watchmen.
Yes, I can't remember her name right now. But
and
yes.
And that was also PJR's girlfriend, and he destroyed her pelvis.
Yeah.
But they had a match where if Taylor Swift lost, she would have to go to rehab because she was on heroin.
Yeah, Taylor Swift.
Oh God, that was such great time.
It was Jesus Christ fighting Adolf Hitler.
For the hardcore and atomweight championship.
Folks, these things happened.
Yes.
These were on these shows. And the ridiculousness of it all. Of course it's ridiculous. But they made these people valuable. I mean, listen, say what you want. This is going to sound really bad out of context. Say what you want about Adolf Hitler. But he came down to the ring and Grandmaster Sexay's walked down to the ring. Yes. Wearing an American flag cape. And he spun the wheel all the time. He had that big Vegas wheel that Bischoff used.
Oh my God.
And he was in at least 3 segments with that wheel.
Yes.
And, and again, I understand if that's something that you're not cool with as far as that particular individual being a part of it, but that's the level of absurdity.
Yes.
Jesus actually going CrossFit.
Think about this. They made Hitler a babyface and it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, you wouldn't be able to know that unless you watched the show and you understood what level of depth they were giving to these people.
Yes.
And that's something that is also really important. Whoa, he's only cuts and bruises. Yusuke Urameshi. I don't even know who the hell Yusuke was until that show.
Me either. That's how I got introduced to a bunch of other anime.
And that kind of thing. King being an actual kitten.
and Trevor and Packard like, no, I'm not signing off on this. And PGR's like, just 25% cat.
This is happening. This is yeah.
Oh,
there was
God.
Just all of those types of things because they knew not only how to get themselves over, but also how to get their talent over so that if you saw a thumbnail with a particular wrestler on it, you were clicking it.
Oh, yeah, because you knew it was going to get ridiculous.
Because something was going down. Captain Pollution.
Darth Maul being Darth Paul.
Yes.
Myotis Mon being a Jamaican vampire.
Yep. Skeletor! And, all of that. All of, that whole thing. And they did it with everybody that they ever had.
Yeah.
TMNXT, the Demon Chicken.
Oh, my God, the Demon Chicken was the best thing ever.
Yeah, Johnny Bravo and Scott Steiner. Yeah, because the possibilities with Efeds are endless, and they really did step outside the box with not only their presentation, but also the way that they nurtured the talent, got the talent more valuable the more that they wrestled, as far as who was champion and why they became champion in the 7-on-7 and all that stuff that was so impactful that you made an entire saga of 3 or 4 months of nostalgia based on that show.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the kind of level. It's because of that show that both you and I created Wrestling Feds.
Exactly.
This is where that kind of thing is, and they had their highs and lows.
Yes, they did.
Of course, especially You know, especially after they were hired by WWE and they decided to just kill that while it was hot.
That honestly was the beginning of the end because, and Steve Magnitude has actually said this, that killed his passion.
Well, it's hard to get your dream job only to have that yanked away from you because of
the second you get it.
A lethal concoction of problems.
Yeah.
Between them wanting to water the MagNation down, the feud that was going on between Packard and PJR in real life, that they were kind of like arguing all the time. And then, of course, you know, without getting into any details because you folks don't need to know it, the issues between Magnitude and Packard.
Yeah.
Which have been resolved.
Yes.
I'm told.
Thank God.
And so, but you know, it was all of that, and then it would just became, and what I think did them in, because what made them really popular is they had these one-offs, right? TMNT, you know, the Ninja Turtles versus the Power Rangers, and the Avengers versus Justice League, and all of their matches, their whole presentation was a video a day, a match a day. The second they went to full show format, their popularity decreased rapidly.
And I will also go forward in saying that they were at their best when Magnitude would actually control one of the characters and get them to do certain things. Not only did when they went to full-length shows all the time, did their popularity go down, the second that they did... Well, my computer just did something. The second that they went...
Packard wants to know your location.
Yeah, that's what that was. But
yeah,
my thing is not only when they went to full-length shows... When they went to purely computer versus computer all the time and they had no control over the outcome of any match, that's also when their popularity tanked.
Yeah, and they kind of went hand in hand. I mean, you know, they had that whole Harlots division with Packard, which, of course, was okay. It was a little out there, but it was okay.
Yeah.
Just because it got a little maybe too vulgar for some people's tastes.
Yeah.
With the way that it was presented. And also it kind of, you know, with the one way where they were nurturing a lot of the male talent, it did not feel like way with the female talent. They were more degrading the female talent than they were building them up.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of that problem. But then they do it to the full shows and people's attention spans, and this was really at the time when people's attention spans were really getting bad, nobody was going to sit through a 49-minute show of Efed wrestling, you know, until, you know, and on a major scale like that, especially it was on a once a week basis.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing for a multi-million-dollar company to do it who's got millions of views that they know they're going to get, but YouTube with it being that quick to just switch to something else.
Yeah.
And because then it became, and not to knock Trevor and Magnitude's chemistry, because they clearly had it, but then Packard disappearing and not having that kind of voice of outlandishness to kind of counteract the straight man gimmick of Trevor and Magnitude also left, it made it feel like something was missing.
Yeah, and they never got that back.
And they never really recaptured it. Yeah, and again, this is no knock on any of these individuals, right?
Exactly.
Shit happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, that's all it is. It's just shit happens. But the bottom line is that this company kicked in all those doors for us.
Exactly.
They were the ones who went through, experienced all of those doors. It's like Elvis. You know, he was the first celebrity with the power of television, so he made all the mistakes because there was nobody to help him out. And that's basically what happened with the MagNation. They got wickedly popular. They started really succeeding on YouTube. They got somebody of major stature interested in them. They didn't go for it. They got into personal infighting. They tried to salvage what was left. They tried to renovate with a format that just wasn't going to go the way that they wanted it to go. And then they had no choice but to close.
Yeah. That was sad when they closed.
It was sad, but at that point it almost felt like a mercy kill.
Yeah.
Because their numbers just weren't what they were. they weren't getting the people
they
in.
used to pull like thousands and thousands and thousands of views, and then their latest stuff could barely crack 100.
They were, well, or even, you know, it eventually got to, you know, they would get 400 people as opposed to 15,000.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it became so, we're diehard MagNation fans rather than look at this phenomenon. And while MagNation was soaring, it was awesome riding the wave with them.
2012 and 2013 was just glorious.
It was a blast. It was a total blast.
2014, it just slowly stopped and went down and down and down, and then it just stopped.
And as somebody who's had an Efed shut down and revamp and shut down again, like, I know it's a lot of effort. Mm-hmm. People don't really understand. For an hour-long show, you're talking recording all the raw footage. You're talking rendering all the raw footage. Talking editing the raw footage. Then you're rendering and audio mixing with all of the commentary. Then you're re-rendering to export it out of the video software. Then you're uploading it to YouTube. That shit takes time.
It is very, very time consuming and energy consuming.
Yeah. And that's if everything goes well.
Yes. And with technology being technology all the time, things just go wrong.
Yeah, so it's like I will never knock the hard work and effort and dedication it took for the MagNation to run as long as it did, despite all of the adversity it faced.
Now, real quick, before we continue, how are you introduced to the MagNation? Like, what was your first MagNation match?
I found it quite by accident, actually. I think it was like, it just showed up on the algorithm one day, and I forget what, I don't even remember what match it was. But it was in the early days.
I remember my first MagNation match because I was just looking up random stuff on YouTube. Like, I typed in Frieza versus whoever, and one of the suggestions was Darth Maul. And I was like, huh? And I clicked on it, and it took me to Frieza and Darth Maul's Hell in a Cell match, which was like their third or fourth ever video on that channel.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is weird, but the commentators are hilarious. I'm going to keep watching. And then just like that, I was hooked.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way it was. And that was the cool thing about them, too. It's like it wasn't every match that you needed to watch. Because sometimes the matches, you just had these individual moments that were absolutely ridiculous and very, very entertaining. I'm looking up now. Remember, what was the other one that was here? We didn't mention Ash Ketchum.
Oh, yeah, Ash Ketchum.
Ash Fuckface Ketchum. That's right.
That's the good one.
And they had all those kinds of things. Bojack versus Master Chief in a 20-minute Iron Man match.
Oh, yeah.
And
Ron Swanson versus
Kenny Powers.
Kenny Powers in a cage match.
In their one and only match.
Vegeta. Wasn't there a triple threat match, Donald Trump versus Ryu versus Piccolo?
I believe there was.
God.
I believe there was.
And their first ever matchup, Mace Windu versus Android 17.
Yep. The original. The original. Frieza versus Ganondorf. That was the match that I think it was. Because I was looking up Legend of Zelda stuff, and I saw Ganondorf versus Frieza, and I'm like, all right, I'm curious. And then I saw the rest of this, and I think Ganondorf only had like 2 other matches.
Yeah, he had like a inter-universal title match with Majin Buu, I think, that ended in DQ for some reason.
Yeah, very short run.
Yeah.
And, but then, you know, for that, we have Captain Planet and Captain Pollution.
Oh, yeah.
Viva la Pollution.
Viva la Pollution.
You know, so and the fact that these are still being referenced and being acknowledged today, and the fact that we're talking about them literally 10 years after their first video started.
My God.
Almost. It's still at 9. It's not a full 10. But here we are.
That is insane. It's been that long.
Yeah. That's where we're at. And honestly, the fact that they hold up that well makes the case for why there's more good than bad if you've got the presentation right with Efeds. Presentation is everything. perception is reality. I've said it multiple times. I've said both of those things multiple times, but it's no more demonstrated by the wave that was the MagNation. And I genuinely, they lived a hell of a life, but kind of like Steve Austin, I hope that it's over.
Yeah.
Now,
real quick, I know we're getting close to signing off here. What are some other Efeds besides the MagNation that you've looked at or enjoyed or anything like that?
Well, I particularly like this little promotion known as TAW.
Oh my God. I kind of figured you would say that.
I heard that's not too bad. I've also heard this company called CIW is all right. They use an older school format. They use a SmackDown versus Raw match show instead of that.
They keep closing down and revamping.
Well, that's Jack 6 for you. Messing with people all the time or causing a PlayStation to die after 7 years of use.
Yeah. Now, for me, real quick, the one that I want to give a quick shout out to, the MagNation inspired me to start my company. Anime Championship Wrestling, ACPW, showed me how to do it properly. Because with the MagNation, there is an element of actually trying to do an actual wrestling match within the context of a video game world within that level of kayfabe. Whereas the MagNation was kind of like the Wild Wild West with funny commentary.
Yeah.
So MagNation inspired me to do it. ACW, I was like, okay, this is how you structure a video game wrestling match to where within the kayfabe of the moment, it can actually look like and have some kind of story within it. So ACW is still around today, and it's like the second most popular Efed out there. Shout out to ACW. You guys are awesome.
It's a much better formatted match, and I really give credit to Hakeem because he puts in so much work.
Hakeem is insane. I love
so much work. For those of you, if you guys are interested in any of these Efeds, I'm going to leave a kind of a list of these of the ones that we have fought. We'll bring in some MagNation. I'll plug CIW. I'll plug TAW, and we'll prop in ACW as well, and maybe even a couple others that we pop in because there's a lot of really creative stuff out there. And now, I will never knock.
With that said, real quick, I just want to mention the worst Efed I've ever watched. Have you ever heard of Story Mode Federation, SMF?
Is that the one that they're doing in like the Super Nintendo game?
No, this was a SmackDown versus Raw game where they just did outlandish, offensive stuff all the time. It was the one where they would do like these insane edits like all the time and pretend like they had crappy equipment just for the lulz. And this one show they had their hardcore title. They had a terrorist win it, and then the terrorist got hit by a car because they switched to a Grand Theft Auto game, and the person that ran him over won the title. And then the person lost it to Spyro the Dragon, and then Spyro cut to Spyro the video game where he drowns in water. So Water was the hardcore champion. Then the guy had his real life friend pin Water to win the hardcore title, and then his real life friend ran out and pretended to get hit by a car so that his friend could win the hardcore title. It was just like his friend could have actually gotten seriously injured because he did run out in front of a moving vehicle for a joke for an Efed. Just that's the thing that happened.
This is why what we mentioned before, you got to take these things not so seriously.
Yeah.
And there's always a limit with everything. Yeah. It's just like wrestling. There's Efeds that are like down the middle, like ACW and CIW and TAW, and then there's the outlaws of the Efeds.
Yeah, the CZW.
Think about that. Think about that. Think about that for a second. Not the outlaws of the actual wrestling industry, the outlaws of the niche of the wrestling industry.
Yeah.
That's a group of outcasts right there, baby.
Oh, yeah.
And thankfully, we are not associated with such ilk. But if we go on much longer, I'm going to get ilk. So we are going. So it is time. It is time for our first commercial break.
Way to bring it home, Sean.
JoshAgeddon, thank you so much for being a part of this show. This was a lot of fun. We talked about a lot of new stuff and a lot of things that I think people are maybe not even be aware of in the world of professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was a pleasure as always, Sean.
As always, and we will see you next time. And of course, next week, ACPW versus NWL, the first week of season 3. And I hear that there might be some SCCG coming up soon.
Oh, yes. The final episode before our first pay-per-view, episode 7, is the go-home show for Sumter Slam, and it's going to get weird.
And that's the way it ends. Just like Outlaw Efeds, it gonna get weird. Oh, but thankfully,
-1 versus the Fiend.
That's right. So if that's not enough to get you interested, then I don't know what to tell you anymore, other than it's time to go to our first commercial break. Thank you all for being a part of episode 101, and we will see you next week right after this short break.